North Korea attacks a UN humanitarian convoy carrying 200 peacekeepers. The 3-hour battle that follows becomes the bloodiest naval engagement on the Korean Peninsula since 1950. October 9th, 2025. The Sea of Japan, 47 nautical miles east of Wonsan, North Korea. At 7:32 a.m., the MV Global Hope, a chartered cargo vessel flying the United Nations flag, was steaming south through international waters. Her holds contained 4,000 tons of rice, medical supplies, and winter clothing destined for humanitarian distribution in South Korea. But her most valuable cargo was human. 200 peacekeepers from 12 nations, UN observers, medical personnel, and logistics coordinators returning from an inspection mission in Japan. The vessel, clearly marked with UN insignia and transmitting her identity on open channels, posed no military threat. She was protected by international law, the Geneva Conventions, and the assumption that even North Korea wouldn't dare attack a clearly identified humanitarian ship. That assumption was about to be shattered. At 7:41 a.m., sonar operators aboard the USS Chung-Hoon, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer escorting the cargo ship at a distance of 8 nautical miles, detected unusual underwater contacts. Multiple small submarines, estimated displacement under 300 tons, were converging on the MV Global Hope from the west. North Korea operated a fleet of Sangho and Yono-class midget submarines, coastal vessels designed for infiltration and special operations. Intelligence had tracked their movements for years, but never this far from shore, and never in such numbers. At 7:44 a.m., the count reached 6 submarines, then 8. By 7:48 a.m., 12 midget submarines were closing on the cargo ship at speeds of 8 knots. This was no accidental encounter. This was a coordinated attack. The USS Chung-Hoon's captain transmitted an emergency warning to the MV Global Hope. Hostile submarines inbound, increase speed, alter course to 180 degrees, prepare for boarding action. The cargo ship's master, a Norwegian merchant captain with 30 years' experience, complied immediately. The Global Hope's engines, capable of 16 knots maximum, were pushed to their limits. But 12 midget submarines, even slow ones, could still intercept a cargo vessel. And at 7:52 a.m., they did. The first Sangho submarine surfaced 400 meters ahead of the cargo ship, blocking her path. Hatches opened. 30 North Korean Special Forces soldiers, armed with AK-74 rifles and RPG-7 rocket launchers, emerged onto the submarine's deck. A second submarine surfaced to port. A third to starboard. Within minutes, the MV Global Hope was surrounded. At 7:56 a.m., North Korean soldiers opened fire. RPG-7 rockets streaked toward the cargo ship, striking her superstructure and starting small fires. Heavy machine gun fire raked the decks, forcing UN personnel to take cover. The cargo ship, unarmed and defenseless, could only transmit distress calls as North Korean commandos prepared to board. Grappling hooks flew, boarding ladders extended from submarine decks to the cargo ship's railings. North Korean soldiers began climbing, their mission clear: seize the vessel, capture the 200 UN peacekeepers, and create an international crisis that would give Pyongyang leverage in stalled nuclear negotiations. For Kim Jong-un's regime, this was high-stakes hostage diplomacy backed by military force. But North Korea had made a critical miscalculation. The USS Chung-Hoon was not going to watch 200 peacekeepers be captured without responding. At 7:58 a.m., the destroyer went to general quarters. Her 5-inch Mark 45 naval gun, capable of firing 20 rounds per minute at targets 13 miles away, swiveled toward the nearest submarine. Rules of engagement were clear: defend UN vessels against unlawful attack, use minimum force necessary, but if hostages were in imminent danger, authorization for lethal force was granted. At 8:02 a.m., the first North Korean soldier reached the cargo ship's deck. The Chung-Hoon's captain made the call: weapons free, engage all hostile forces. What's your tactical call? Type A if you'd fire immediately and risk hitting the cargo ship. Type B if you'd close distance first for more precision. Drop your answer below. At 8:01 a.m., the USS Chung-Hoon opened fire. The first 5-inch shell, a high explosive round weighing 70 pounds, struck the water 10 meters from a surface submarine, creating a geyser that knocked soldiers off the sub's deck. The message was clear: back off or die. North Korean forces didn't back off. Instead, 2 submarines launched torpedoes, Type 53 weapons dating from the 1960s but still deadly at close range. The torpedoes, traveling at 45 knots, closed on the cargo ship. The MV Global Hope, slow and unmaneuverable, couldn't evade. But the USS Chung-Hoon could. At 8:03 a.m., the destroyer launched countermeasures, acoustic decoys that mimicked the cargo ship's propeller noise. One torpedo was decoyed and ran off course. The second continued toward the Global Hope. At 8:04 a.m., traveling at maximum speed, the Chung-Hoon positioned herself between the torpedo and the cargo ship. The destroyer's failing CIWS, designed for missile defense, engaged in a desperate attempt to destroy the torpedo underwater. The 20mm gun fired 600 rounds in 3 seconds, creating a wall of tungsten. The torpedo, its guidance system damaged, veered off and detonated 200 meters away. The shockwave rocked both vessels, but caused no casualties. The North Korean attack intensified. Soldiers who had boarded the cargo ship were fighting UN peacekeepers hand to hand. A Canadian Army officer, armed only with a fire axe, killed 2 North Korean commandos before being shot in the shoulder. A Japanese medic used a flare gun to drive back boarders attempting to reach the bridge. And below decks, 150 peacekeepers barricaded themselves in cargo holds, using rice sacks as cover while North Korean soldiers tried to break through. The situation was deteriorating into a massacre. The Chung-Hoon needed backup, and it was coming fast. At 8:12 a.m., 4 F-35B Lightning II fighters, launched from the USS America, a Wasp-class amphibious assault ship operating 120 miles to the south, arrived on station. Each F-35B carried AGM-114 Hellfire missiles and a 25mm GAU-22 cannon. Flying at 15,000 feet, the stealth fighters were invisible to North Korean radar, but their electro-optical targeting systems could see everything. At 8:15 a.m., the lead F-35B locked onto a surface submarine that was launching another torpedo. A single Hellfire missile, fired from 8 miles away, struck the submarine's conning tower. The explosion was catastrophic. The submarine, its pressure hull breached, sank in less than 90 seconds. 40 North Korean sailors went down with her. The remaining submarines, realizing they faced air attack, attempted to dive. But midget submarines are slow to submerge, requiring 3 to 4 minutes to reach safe depth. The F-35Bs didn't give them that time. Over the next 6 minutes, Hellfire missiles destroyed 3 more submarines. A 5th submarine, damaged by cannon fire, lost buoyancy control and surfaced bow first before capsizing. Only 7 of the original 12 submarines remained operational, and they were fleeing toward North Korean territorial waters at maximum speed. The underwater threat was neutralized, but the battle on the cargo ship was far from over. At 8:22 a.m., the USS America launched her Marines. 8 MV-22B Osprey tiltrotor aircraft, each carrying 24 combat-equipped Marines, raced toward the MV Global Hope at 280 knots. The 192 Marines, drawn from the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, were specialists in visit, board, search, and seizure operations. Their mission was to retake the cargo ship, eliminate or capture North Korean borders, and secure the UN Peacekeepers. The flight time from the America to the target was 18 minutes. At 8:40 a.m., the Ospreys arrived. The scene below was chaos. The MV Global Hope's decks were littered with bodies, burned wreckage, and ongoing firefights. Approximately 60 North Korean soldiers remained aboard, fighting from entrenched positions. The UN peacekeepers, armed with sidearms and improvised weapons, were holding defensive positions, but taking casualties. The Marines needed to separate friend from foe in close quarters, a nearly impossible task. But they had one advantage: the F-35Bs overhead, using advanced targeting pods, could identify North Korean soldiers by their uniforms and equipment. This information was transmitted in real time to the Marines. At 8:42 a.m., the Ospreys began their assault. Subscribe now if you want coverage of the most intense modern combat operations. This is analysis you won't find anywhere else. The first 4 Ospreys hovered 20 feet above the cargo ship's stern, their rotors creating hurricane-force winds that knocked unsecured equipment overboard. Marines fast roped down, hitting the deck in under 15 seconds per aircraft. Within 90 seconds, 96 Marines were aboard, immediately engaging North Korean soldiers. The firefight was brutal and close range. North Korean commandos, realizing they faced superior forces, fought with suicidal determination. Some detonated grenades rather than surrender. Others charged Marine positions in desperate final assaults. But the Marines, equipped with body armor, night vision, and overwhelming firepower, systematically cleared the ship. Room by room, deck by deck, corridor by corridor. At 8:58 a.m., Marines breached the cargo hold where 150 UN peacekeepers were barricaded. The peacekeepers, hearing American voices, emerged cautiously. Relief turned to tears as they realized rescue had arrived. But the battle wasn't over. North Korean soldiers still held the bridge, where they had taken the ship's captain and 10 crew members hostage. The standoff was tense. North Korean officers threatened to execute hostages if Marines advanced. But Marine snipers, positioned on upper decks, had clear lines of sight through the bridge windows. At 9:12 a.m., on command, 3 snipers fired simultaneously. 3 North Korean officers were killed instantly with headshots. The remaining soldiers, shocked and leaderless, surrendered within 30 seconds. By 9:25 a.m., the MV Global Hope was secured. Of the 200 UN peacekeepers aboard, 11 had been killed and 34 wounded during the initial North Korean assault and boarding action. The cargo ship's crew suffered 3 dead and 7 wounded. North Korean casualties were catastrophic. Of approximately 360 Special Forces soldiers and sailors involved in the attack, 240 were confirmed dead, 80 captured, and 40 missing, presumed drowned when their submarines sank. 5 midget submarines were destroyed. 7 escaped but were so heavily damaged they would require months of repairs. North Korea's elite naval special forces had been effectively annihilated. The USS Chung-Hoon, which had shielded the cargo ship and engaged submarines at point-blank range, suffered minor damage from near-miss torpedo explosions. No American casualties. The destroyer's crew had performed flawlessly, executing anti-submarine warfare, surface gunnery, and close support operations simultaneously. Her captain would later receive the Navy Cross for actions that prevented a full-scale hostage crisis. The MV Global Hope, battered but afloat, was escorted to Busan, South Korea, where survivors received medical treatment and debriefings. The humanitarian cargo, largely intact, was eventually delivered. The mission, despite the attack, succeeded. The international response was swift and unanimous. The UN Security Council, including China and Russia, condemned North Korea's attack on a clearly marked humanitarian vessel. Even Beijing, usually protective of Pyongyang, voted for sanctions targeting North Korea's military procurement networks. The regime had crossed a line so egregious that even its allies couldn't defend it. Within 48 hours, North Korea's UN ambassador faced expulsion proceedings. Diplomatic isolation, already severe, deepened further. For North Korea, the attack was a strategic disaster. The regime had intended to capture UN peacekeepers and use them as bargaining chips in nuclear negotiations. Instead, they lost 240 elite soldiers, 5 submarines, and whatever diplomatic credibility remained. Kim Jong-un's government issued contradictory statements, first claiming the attack was a defensive response to provocations, then blaming rogue military commanders. Neither explanation was credible. Satellite imagery and intercepted communications proved the attack was coordinated at the highest levels. The regime had gambled and lost catastrophically. Should North Korea face military retaliation beyond the defensive actions taken? Or were the casualties and submarine losses sufficient? Comment your opinion below. For the families of the 11 UN peacekeepers killed, the loss was devastating. They had died serving a humanitarian mission, attacked by a regime that respected no international norms. Memorial services were held across 12 nations. Their sacrifice was honored, and their deaths became a rallying point for increased military readiness on the Korean Peninsula. South Korea accelerated defense spending. Japan expanded its military cooperation with the United States. And NATO members with personnel in Asia demanded better protection for humanitarian missions. The United States military used the engagement as a case study in joint operations. The seamless coordination between a destroyer, carrier base fighters, amphibious assault ships, and marine infantry demonstrated the value of integrated forces. The USS Chung-Hoon's decision to position herself between a torpedo and the cargo ship became a textbook example of selfless service. And the Marines' rapid response, fast roping onto a moving ship under fire and clearing it in 43 minutes, validated years of training and investment in amphibious capabilities. Technologically, the battle proved several points. Midget submarines, while useful for covert operations, were vulnerable to modern anti-submarine warfare. The F-35B's sensor suite, which provided real-time battlefield intelligence to ground forces, was a game-changer. And the Osprey tiltrotor, often criticized as expensive and maintenance-intensive, demonstrated its value by delivering Marines to a contested target faster than any helicopter could. The battle vindicated technologies that skeptics had questioned. For the 80 captured North Korean soldiers, their fate was uncertain. Under international law, they were prisoners of war, but North Korea refused to acknowledge them. Defection offered some a chance at new lives. Others faced years in detention, pawns in diplomatic negotiations that might never conclude. Interrogations revealed that many had been told the MV Global Hope was a spy ship carrying Western intelligence operatives. The lie, spread by regime propaganda, had sent them into battle under false premises. Some expressed remorse. Others remained defiant. All faced uncertain futures. The 7 damaged submarines that escaped limped back to North Korean ports, where assessments confirmed they were beyond economical repair. North Korea's midget submarine fleet, once numbering over 40 vessels, was reduced by a third in a single morning. Rebuilding would take years, and resources the regime didn't have. The Naval Special Forces units, elite formations trained for decades, had been gutted. Replacing 240 dead soldiers with equivalent skill levels would take a generation. October 17th hadn't just been a tactical defeat. It was a strategic blow that crippled North Korea's asymmetric naval capabilities. For South Korea, the attack reinforced the need for vigilance. North Korea, despite economic collapse and international isolation, remained capable of reckless aggression. The South Korean Navy increased patrols, intelligence gathering intensified, and cooperation with the United States deepened. Joint exercises, already frequent, became even more realistic, incorporating lessons from October 17th. The message was clear. Any North Korean aggression would face immediate and overwhelming response. Japan, which had contributed peacekeepers to the convoy, used the attack to justify expanding its self-defense forces. Constitutional debates that had simmered for years gained urgency. Public opinion, shocked by the deaths of Japanese citizens on a humanitarian mission, shifted toward supporting stronger military capabilities. Within months, defense budgets increased by 15%. New destroyers were authorized, and discussions about acquiring offensive strike capabilities, long taboo, entered mainstream political discourse. For the United Nations, the attack forced uncomfortable questions. How could humanitarian missions be protected in regions where international law was ignored? Should peacekeepers be armed more heavily? Should military escorts be mandatory? The debates were contentious, but one conclusion was universal. Relying on the goodwill of rogue regimes was no longer acceptable. UN missions in dangerous regions would require credible military protection, and nations contributing peacekeepers demanded assurances that their personnel wouldn't be abandoned if attacked. The MV Global Hope, repaired over 3 months, returned to service carrying humanitarian cargo. Her crew, traumatized but determined, continued their work. The ship became a symbol of resilience, proof that even the most brutal attacks couldn't stop humanitarian efforts. Her captain received multiple awards from maritime organizations, and the vessel herself was fitted with enhanced communications equipment and defensive measures, ensuring future missions would have better early warning of threats. As analysts dissected every minute of the 3-hour battle, one truth emerged. North Korea's attack failed because it underestimated the speed and lethality of the American response. The USS Chung-Hoon's willingness to engage despite risks, the F-35B's ability to destroy submarines from altitude, the Marines' rapid insertion and professional clearing operations. Every element worked because training, technology, and leadership aligned. October 17th was proof that even desperate attacks by determined adversaries could be defeated when professional militaries responded decisively. The Sea of Japan, where the battle occurred, returned to its normal traffic patterns within days. But the wreckage on the seafloor, 5 sunken midget submarines resting in 400 meters of water, remained as silent testimony. North Korea had attacked a humanitarian convoy and paid a price so severe that even its own propaganda couldn't spin it as anything but disaster. 240 soldiers dead, 80 captured, elite units destroyed, and international condemnation so universal that even allies refused to defend the action. October 17th was a reminder that some acts of aggression are so reckless, so indefensible, that they unite the world in opposition. Now I want 3 perspectives from you. First, should the UN change how it protects humanitarian missions in hostile regions after this attack? Second, was the US military response proportional, or should North Korea face additional consequences? Third, what does this battle reveal about the viability of midget submarines in modern naval warfare? Share your analysis in the comments. Every insight contributes to the strategic discussions we have here. And if this breakdown of one of the most intense naval battles in recent history kept you engaged, prove it by hitting that like button, subscribing to this channel, and turning on notifications. Until next time, stay informed, stay sharp, and remember that attacking the defenseless invites consequences that aggressors rarely survive.